Welcome back to Orange Nation. Artist of the day today, Steve. Peter Gabriel, celebrating the release of a very fun album called So. This is not off of that album, but a good one. Shock the Monkey.
If this is the seventh best song, then we're in good shape.
Yeah,
today.
you're good. You're going to know all of them. I was bopping around in the studio to all these.
All right, let's...
Only one number one hit for him, though.
Is that right?
Bet you can guess it.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's go to our guest line. Bring on our first guest today. We've got 4 guests, so let's get right to it as we're pleased to be joined by Mike McAllister, good friend of the show, publisher of Syracuse on SI. Mike, always great to have you on. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
We're doing well. So, all right, we're going to get into Kyle Cuff here and what kind of player he is in a moment. But I want to get to the more pressing question, which is, does the addition of Kyle Cuff indicate something to us about Judah Mintz, as in he's gone and he's not coming back?
I think yes. Don't know for 100% fact, but I just don't think that Syracuse makes this move to bring in another guard if they thought Judah was coming back. So the fact that it seemed like the rumblings behind the scenes were more towards, him leaving. And I know, Brian Higgins had I think it was Joe Tipton on his show. And he said, well, I haven't had any direct communication with Judah, but what I've heard is he doesn't intend on coming back to school. That kind of leaned towards he's staying in the draft. And then, shortly after that, this happens. So I think all the tea leaves are certainly pointing in that direction, but we haven't heard anything official, obviously, yet.
I read your article, Mike, on this, and Cuff seemed to be under the impression, though, that Syracuse is telling these guys, hey, he could come back, right? So, there's going to be a battle for these playing time at Syracuse.
Yeah, and that's part of it, too, is they have said to the incoming guards that there's still a possibility that he returns, so that if he goes out and has a performance at the combine that wrecks any draft stock that he had, and he gets told no one's taking you, and he says, all right, well then I need to go back, that the incoming players, incoming transfers know that that's still a possibility, so it wouldn't catch them off guard, that they should be expecting to have to compete for playing time, for a starting position, not only with potentially Judah, but with the other guys on the roster as well. So that's been clearly communicated to everybody that's coming in. All
right, so what do we make of Kyle Cuff Jr.? As you pointed out in your post, and we talked about on the show, hasn't played at Kansas really, redshirted, and then last year he was hurt for a majority of the year, and just appeared in very, very limited action at Kansas in those 2 years. But he was at Kansas, so he must be good, right? I mean, tell us about him as a player and what SU fans can expect.
Yeah, Kansas generally doesn't recruit scrubs, right? So what we know is he sort of fits the mold of what Coach Autry said he's looking for with his team, in that he's someone who's great in transition. He pushes tempo. He's good in the open floor, and that's, really athletic, bouncy, all of those types of things. Coach Autry has said he wants to push tempo. He wants to run. He wants to get out and transition more. Kyle Cuff fits the mold of someone who excels at that. He did it at the high school level. He did it at the AAU level, was viewed as one of the most explosive athletes in that class. So I think, that tells you that, the things that Coach Autry said during his introductory press conference wasn't just lip service. He's backing that up with the type of players that he's getting.
We talked in the first segment, Mike, about expectations for next year. What are, and I realize the season is still several months off, but what are your expectations? What is a realistic expectation for an SU fan to have going into next season, given the roster, the way it is? Let's assume Judah's not coming back.
Well, if you go into it expecting 0 wins, you'll be happy. So maybe all the fans should do that. Expect no wins, and then you'll end up being very surprised. I mean, in all seriousness, I think you go. I don't think if you're a Syracuse fan, you change your expectations. Your expectations are you're going to be good, you're going to be competitive with the better teams in the conference, and you're going to be. You should be late in the season in the NCAA tournament discussion, if not comfortably in. I don't think you change your expectations of what you think Syracuse basketball should be. You should be a team that's in the NCAA tournament year in and year out. And I think if even with the change in coaching and the turnover and everything else, there's tons of question marks. We don't know how Coach Autry is going to be as a head coach. We don't know what his rotations are going to be like. Even though we think we have inklings as to what his philosophy is going to be, we don't specifically know how things are going to go on both ends of the floor. How much man is he going to play? How much zone is he going to play? How much is he going to go in between the two? All of those things. What does he do in late game situations? What types of plays does he draw up? Tons of questions. Lots of new faces with all the additions from the transfer portal. Tons of question marks. It's still Syracuse basketball. The fans are still going to have the same expectations. I don't think you change that just because of all of the changes that have happened with the roster and the coaching staff.
You mentioned so many questions, and you're right. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here, though, and we've had a little bit of fun trying to project the starting lineup. Do you want to take a stab at it? If you had to give us a starting lineup today, what would it be in your mind?
Yeah, I wrote about this after the Kyle Cuff news came out and put what my projected starting lineup and rotation is. Now, this is my thoughts on where it is right now. Obviously, they haven't played together. They haven't been in training camp. They haven't done any of those things. So obviously very much subject to change. But I have Chance Westry starting at point guard, J.J. Starling starting at shooting guard, Chris Bell at small forward, Benny Williams at power forward, and Naheem McLeod at center. That's my current starting lineup as it stands. Now, the biggest question mark for me was who's point guard and who's shooting guard between JJ and Chance. Not sure it really matters. I think they're both kind of combo guards. They'll both kind of, take turns handling the ball and running the offense, but that's my best guess as it currently stands.
Yeah, I like that best guess. I have the same best guess. In terms of the forward position, this is a topic that's come up a lot. Quadir Copeland, what is his path to playing time? Do you think he has a path to playing time here?
Yes, I definitely do, especially because, as I mentioned, Coach Autry has said he wants to play more up-tempo and get out in transition. I think that's an area where Quadir Copeland could be extremely beneficial, whether you play him as a forward and he can be sort of a third ball handler, so another guy you can outlet to who can still run a transition, run a fast break, or whether he's playing in the backcourt, which is, I think, where most expected him to play when he was recruited. I think he's going to be a backup and a rotational guy in both spots, so I do think he's going to see the floor. So that's kind of what my level of expectation is for him.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk some football.
No, I do have one more basketball question. Mike, there was numerous reports yesterday that Syracuse, I'm not going to say his last name because I can't, but Syracuse had reached out to another center from Kansas, and he's on a visit to Duke now, apparently. Was that before or after McLeod had committed to Syracuse?
That was, I think, before, but I'm not 100% on that.
Okay. Do you think they would add another center?
No, I don't think they will. I think they've got enough on the roster.
Okay. All right. Do you have time to talk a little football here, or should we let you go, Mike?
No, you can. Go ahead. So
let's talk a little football. They recently got a couple of commits from the defensive back position, a couple of JUCO guys. What can you tell us about them? And, is that really a position of need is a question that's been coming up from some of our callers that, they don't feel like defensive back is necessarily a position of need, but we want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, my response to that, I've had the same question, and my response is you have a new defensive coordinator who's had all spring to evaluate the roster. And I don't think if he thought that wasn't a position they needed to upgrade, they would have grabbed, another transfer and some junior college players. Clearly, that was an area where he thought they needed some more depth. They needed some more bodies or guys that could compete for a starting lineup, for a starting spot. So that's kind of where I think this is a result of his evaluation, Rocky Long's, of the spring roster. In terms of, not grabbing a defensive lineman, I absolutely think defensive line is still an area that they'll look at through the transfer portal to try to bring in someone to replace Jatias Gear. So I don't think the roster is completely set yet, but I understand the concern, thinking that they had a bunch of guys in the secondary that could play, that had experience or had been recruited, and why are you bringing in more transfers at this juncture? but I think it's a direct result of the evaluation of where things were during the spring.
All right. Informative stuff as always, Mike. Really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for coming on. Enjoy the weekend, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Mike McAllister, publisher of Syracuse on SI. Quick timeout. We got James Colgan, editor from golf.com. He'll join us next to bring us up to date on round 2 of the PGA Championship. We're back after this on ESPN.